Steve did a great job to qualify on the second row, 5th position at the recently run World Superbike round. Coming into Paddock Hill Bend, the first corner on this circuit, Neil Hodgson on the inside on the Ducati, picks the bike up, takes Colin Edwards out, skittles Steve Hislop, and he slides down the circuit cartwheeling, and the bike hitting him on the head as he does so. It looked a terrible, terrible accident. John Reynolds on the left of the screen there just manages to keep on the bike, but Steve Hislop was knocked unconscious. The race was immediately stopped, and paramedics attended Steve on the side of the circuit. There was an eerie silence at the circuit whilst work continued.
And Neil seemed to clip the curb and touch Colin Edwards. And I sat up to avoid Colin, but he'd already gone down, scooped my front wheel, and I thought I should have low-sided with him, but I think...
One local rider that will be here at Knockhill flying the Scottish flag is the very experienced Neil Mackenzie. He put together a stunning lap, 0.8 of a second under John Reynolds' lap record to take pole position, proving that the old magic is James Toseland at this meeting.
James, you've qualified really well, but you're still carrying this silly injury that put you out of the Brand Superbike round last week. Tell us about that.
Yeah, unfortunately I sustained a prolapse disc in my neck in a car accident, and it's been giving me problems down my right arm, so you know, fingers crossed I'm okay for like 4 or 5 laps of qualifying, but we'll have to wait and see how we go in 28.
Chris, you're known for your quick starts, but in these conditions will it be hard?
Yeah, I reckon so. I've not actually raced the bike yet. This bike's Suzuki in the wet, so it's a bit of a bit worried. But no, I mean we think we've got a little bit of a setup, and obviously try and get a good start out of the way of the spray and see what we can do.
Just a week away, you were racing in front of 100,000 people, the sunshine at Brands Hatch for the World Championship round. Is it hard to get motivated now for the domestic series?
No, I mean we've had a fantastic run in qualifying. You know, we managed to get second on the grid, which is the best I've been for a little while. So it's actually nice to come back to a track and race with the boys again. Miss Mackenzie and all the legends last week, so I mean nice to be here on the front row again. Hopefully wicking it up in front of the crowd.
And there are 25 of those boys on the line, 28 laps, 36.4 miles. The weather conditions are atrocious. There is no other word for it. Standing water all the way around the circuit. So 1.3 miles per lap, and a very, very bad start by number 7, Neil Mackenzie, who spun the back wheel. That helped Chris Walker. Walker has gone very hard, but James Hayden has taken the early lead. Number 5, James Hayden, with that injury to his right arm, in fact to his neck, causing a problem with his right arm. He hits the front. Walker, number 2's gone with him. Where was Neil Hodgson? He did not get a good start, neither did his GSE teammate Neil Mackenzie, pole position man. 3rd place, John Crockford, number 56 on the Suzuki. Truly an amazing start from the second row by a privateer.
Yes, and it's an incredibly hard job getting the power down in these conditions. 160 brake horsepower on a wet track doesn't really match, but anyway, he's doing a great job there in 3rd place. Michael Rutter right behind him on the Yamaha, and he comes down the inside, coming into the hairpin. Number 31, Michael Rutter, squeezes it down and gingerly tipping it in its treacherous conditions. Neil Hodgson runs wide there at the hairpin, so things not going well there for the championship leader. But at the front, it's the Ducati, the number 5 Ducati of James Hayden leads Chris Walker.
Wet weather specialist number 31, Rutter, renowned for going well in these conditions. His teammate in the left-hand side, left of centre of your picture, Paul Young, number 96, going equally well. Looking forward now from Neil Mackenzie. You can see the wet weather on your visor. This was his start. Appalling.
It really is, and trying to put the power down is such a hard job. You can't hear your engine, you just have to look at the rev counter and squeeze the power, and it made the bike fishtail around, and all that hard work from qualifying amounted to nothing for Neil Mackenzie.
Deeper into the action, and Walker and Hayden now stretching away their advantage. A solitary 3rd place for Michael Rutter, number 31, up into 4th, going strongly. His teammate, number 96, in your picture now, Paul Young, the Australian, who rode so well in the series last year, but has covered himself with less than glory in the year 2000 championship. It does seem that the level 3 Yamahas are very good in these conditions, but simply are no match for the factory bikes, and indeed 1 or 2 of the privateer bikes in the dry, Steve.
It's a great level of these conditions, and you can already start to see the track drying, little bit of a drying line in the middle of the circuit, and that means that you've got to stay on it. That makes it hard work to pass anyone. You've got to run off of the drying line to get through, and if you've not made a good start, as that man behind him there, John Reynolds is coming through, currently second in the championship. John knows he needs to make up some ground here. Behind him, though, is championship leader Neil Hodgson. So he is in front of him, but Chris Walker is getting away all the time at the front.
And that's the important thing. Number 3, John Reynolds, the man in your picture, came to Knockhill here in Scotland, 6 points adrift of the championship leader, and in front of this man, Chris Walker, in the championship, who was a further 15 points behind John Reynolds. So Walker was in third coming here, but he has now gone round setting the fastest lap. Has anybody told Walker it's wet out there? He's riding with careless abandon, throwing the Suzuki right and left. It's set up to be very, very nimble, and there's the team boss, Paul Denning, watching with something of an anxious face as Reynolds making a move now on Paul Young, looking for another place, Steve.
Yeah, John Reynolds had a look at the end of the straight. They crested a rise at around 150 miles an hour, even in these wet conditions, but Reynolds is obviously quicker than number 96 there, Paul Young, but as I said, it's very difficult to pass. You can still see that drying line, and John Reynolds knows he's got to go round the outside. There's really only one line, and Young makes a mistake there. The rear end of that Yamaha starts to slide. That gives John Reynolds the perfect slingshot move down the inside. He's able to move up on the wet stuff, but he had the drive out of there. So they come out of this Clark corner now, down towards the back straight and up to the hairpin. John Reynolds has moved up another place.
Into fourth then. Runner-up in the championship position so far for Reynolds, but what he knows now is that he needs to get more points than championship leader Neil Hodgson, who is distinctly unhappy in these conditions, and that's why you haven't seen anything of Neil Hodgson. Such a contrast. Two fallers, David Heel, number 99, and David Wood. Marshall's lifting Davy Wood's bike up, so they have had a coming together at the hairpin. It's not difficult to do there. Dreadful conditions. Mackenzie, though, making a fight of it.
And he really is making a fight of it, because he passes another rider there, number 22, Steve Plater, on the Kawasaki. So Mackenzie now really working very, very hard. You can see that drying line all the time. It's getting quicker and quicker the whole time. Down towards the hairpin now. This is the slowest corner on the circuit, right the way down into first gear. Around here, gingerly round, tapping the power on as quick as you possibly can. First gear, second gear, up into third, and the Ducatis amazingly only using fourth gear, so they crest the rise here at about 145 miles an hour, braking quite hard into Duffus Dip, right the way back into second gear now. A negative camber corner, flicking it right then left.
20,000 people are here despite the weather conditions, and many of them are here to watch this man, local favourite Neil Mackenzie, who almost lost the back end there. He's had 24 wins in the series since 1996, and 5 of them have been here at Knockhill on home ground. The people love him. There's Steve Plater. There, though, Neil Hodgson behind Plater. So Hodgson now sitting in 8th place. His teammate, and clearly no team orders, number 7 Neil Mackenzie, is up to 6th. There, the anxious team manager, Roger Marshall, team boss for Team Revy Racing. He's got 2 of his runners in the top 4. There's one of them, John Reynolds, now going very, very hard at Michael Rutter, who's in 3rd. So is it going to be 3rd place here for John Reynolds? He's up the inside of Michael Rutter, approaching the hairpin. Reynolds makes a move on Rutter. He's on the gravel, and he's down. Reynolds is down. He has thrown away a rostrum position. He will be, Steve, distraught.
Yeah, well, he just ran in way too deep, and Dan squeezed the brakes too hard as he's cranking the bike up and ran onto the gravel. Fortunately for John Reynolds' motocross experience, he's kept the engine running. He's got that Ducati back and running now. He's probably damaged it a little bit. Here we go, into the corner. He's trying to brake as much as he can, but the bike's still leant over on the gravel. He had no chance whatsoever. Quickly gets the clutch in there. You can see him pulling the clutch in with his left hand, but keeps it running, and he's back on the circuit. Meanwhile, back at the front, number 2 here, Chris Walker, looking very, very smooth. Walker's often said to be the wild man out on the circuit, but in these conditions, he's really smoothed his style down.
Well, it's no use talking about ifs, maybes and would have beens, but that would have put John Reynolds into a 16-point position. It's all come to nothing because he's not in the top 6. Though Chris Walker, number 2, is on his way to 25 points here, and he will eat. Oh, Hayden's been off. James Hayden has been off. So no wonder Roger Marshall was looking anxious. He had every reason to be anxious. Both his men have ended up in the gravel. Reynolds, we know, is going again. James Hayden, upset, disappointed, shaken, might just have hurt that right arm. Yes, he has. He's given it a knock. but hopefully he'll be out in the next race. Oh dear, what a shame for the Ducati boys. But it's Suzuki at the front. Number 2, Chris Walker, shining in the wet here. The dry line's still evident, although those full treaded wet tyres kicking up spray still. It stayed wet all the way through the race. What a race this has been.
Fortunately for the riders, the track hasn't dried too much because the wet weather tyres don't like the drying lines. But John Reynolds now, number 3 there, he's moved up into 5th place, passing Steve Plater. Tremendous ride from John Reynolds, considering he's already fell off, didn't damage the bike it seems, and he's charging through the pack once again.
Well, his teammate, number 5, James Hayden, unwittingly did him a huge favour by jumping off the bike. That's not the way Hayden would have wanted it, but in doing so, he handed John Reynolds valuable points. And it's amazing that despite the crash, Reynolds is still in front of number 4, Neil Hodgson, the championship leader. What will be the positions at the end of this race? He's in 5th. Ahead of him, Neil Mackenzie, some 6 seconds behind Paul Young, who in turn is sitting in 3rd place, trailing Michael Rutter. So both the level 3 Yamahas will be on the rostrum, and it's Chris Walker there right out in front, but a good ride by Reynolds. I thought it was all over for him when he bit the dust, but he kept it running. There's Michael Rutter, just going past the tail ender Dean Ellison on the SP1 Honda. Michael Rutter, number 31, in 2nd place. He will be delighted with 2nd place, and it's no less, Steve, than he deserves.
None whatsoever. A great rider in these conditions, and you could see the focusing in his eyes, and so you can in this man's, number 96. His teammate Paul Young is charging through also, and these tyres starting to overheat slightly now as they get on the drying lines, and the bike wriggling around, come out towards Clark Corner, 2nd gear corner, taps the power on there, and you see the bike just wriggling as he comes down this back straight up towards the chicane.
Well, it's a gradual bend. It's called Railway Bend left-hander, but the right-hander, as the Michael Rutter and Paul Young pit crew are astonished. They're not used to waving pit boards at the top 3, but they're doing it this time. Neil Mackenzie giving the blue flags, the marshal, to Dean Ellison. Get out of the way, there's a fast man coming. He's in 4th place, number 7, Neil Mackenzie. Dean Ellison, a respectable ride, but he's about to be lapped by the former champion. Number 3, John Reynolds, in 5th, but he can smell the exhaust fumes from Neil Mackenzie. He can smell 4th place. He knows he would desperately use the 13 points that he will get if he can wind in Neil Mackenzie, number 7, and he's got his head down. The bike apparently none the worse for that spill into the gravel. Looking very focused, John Reynolds. He's in 5th at the moment. 11 points will be his, provided he stays on, but he can go a little bit better. He can get 2 more points if he can wind in Neil Mackenzie. We are on the penultimate lap. Neil Mackenzie's in 4th. Ahead of him, it's Paul Young. Rutter's in 2nd, but the race leader, number 2 for Suzuki, is Chris Walker. Mackenzie, though, looking good round here, and he's not usually a wet weather man.
I know he would have preferred dry conditions, especially from that pole position, but he's done a great job there, coming through from that very tardy start. Neil Mackenzie really working hard on that drying line. He had big problems passing back Mark, as we saw earlier, because he had to move off the dry line. It's very, very difficult. Someone lapping much slower than you've got to move off. Chris Walker starting his last lap, crests the rise there, front wheel in the air, and he has a huge margin. He can just cruise this last single lap.
Yeah, it's a good cushion for Chris Walker. Number 36, Gordon Blackley on the Kawasaki with the pink crash helmet is ahead of him, but Chris will have to take no chances whatsoever. He could almost take his time to get past Blackley. Michael Rutter in 2nd place is well away, but 3rd place man Paul Young is coming under some pressure now from Neil Mackenzie, who's put Dean Ellison, the tail ender, between himself and John Reynolds. Just look at the style of Chris Walker. 25 points are his now, with half a lap of the Knockhill circuit remaining, and he has the comfort, if indeed he knows, that his arch rival and the former championship leader, well, still the championship leader, Neil Hodgson, is way down the order. Round the hairpin for the last time, up towards the start-finish, a great wheelie by Chris Walker. This one is his, a little nod and a wave to his pit crew. No one is better at thanking their pit crew than Chris Walker. Mackenzie's having a look at Young. Is he going to be on the rostrum here, the Scotsman? The crowd, the air horns are going. The crowd sense that Mackenzie might just do it. The Ducati punches over the hill. Young keeps the nose in front and just fights off Neil Mackenzie. It was that close. Oh, but a sigh of relief from Paul Young. And a huge ovation for Chris Walker. Someone hands him the flag, as you see. He's got to be... Oh, dear. Nearly did a Noriyuki Haga there and caught it in the back wheel. And those of you who saw Haga catch the flag in the chain at a World Superbike round know what I'm talking about. There it is, confirmation. Hodgson was 6th, but Walker got the win. Mackenzie 4th, Young and Rutter, the 2 Yamahas on the rostrum. A good ride in 8th place for the American Tom Kipp, first time in the UK standing in for Toseland.
Paul, congratulations. Did you know you...
You know, fingers crossed. I mean, I'm okay for like 4 or 5 laps of qualifying, but we'll have to wait and see how we go in 28.
Chris, you're known for your quick starts, but in these conditions, will it be hard?
Yeah, I reckon so. I've not actually raced the bike yet. This bike's Suzuki in the wet, so it's a bit of a... We're a bit worried, but no, I mean, we think we've got a little bit of a setup, and obviously try and get a good start out of the way of the spray and see what we can do.
Just a week away, you were racing in front of 100,000 people, the sunshine at Brands Hatch for the World Championship round. Is it hard to get motivated? It's the very experienced Neil Mackenzie. He put together a stunning lap, 0.8 of a second under John Reynolds' lap record to take pole position, proving that the old magic is James Toseland at this meeting.
James, you've qualified really well, but you're still carrying this silly injury that put you out of the Brand Superbike round last week. Tell us about that.
Yeah, unfortunately I sustained a prolapse disc in my neck in a car accident, and it's been giving me problems down my right arm. So
Steve did a great job to qualify on the second row, 5th position at the recently run World Superbike round. Coming into Paddock Hill Bend, the first corner on this circuit, Neil Hodgson on the inside on the Ducati, picks the bike up, takes Colin Edwards out, skittles Steve Hislop, and he slides down the circuit cartwheeling, and the bike hitting him on the head as he does so. It looked a terrible, terrible accident. John Reynolds on the left of the screen there just manages to keep on the bike. But Steve Hislop now for the domestic series.
No, I mean, we've had a fantastic run in qualifying. You know, we managed to get second on the grid, which is the best I've been for a little while. So it's actually nice to come back to a track and race with the boys again. Miss Mackenzie and all the legends last week, so I mean, nice to be here on the front row again. Hopefully wicking it up in front of the crowd.
And there are 25 of those boys on the line, 28 laps, 36.4 miles. The weather conditions are atrocious. There is no other word for it. Standing water all the way around the circuit.
Was knocked unconscious. The race was immediately stopped, and paramedics attended Steve on the side of the circuit. There was an eerie silence at the circuit whilst work continued.
And Neil seemed to clip the curb and touch Colin Edwards. And I sat up to avoid Colin, but he'd already gone down, scooped my front wheel, and I thought I should have low-sided with him, but I think...
One local rider that will be here at Knockhill flying the Scottish flag.